of the key achievements of the Norwegian chairship of the Arctic Council was keeping it together after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But is the status quo tenable?
No.
Is it in the best interest of the Arctic?
No, status quo is not good. This is a holding operation to keep the apparatus alive as we're waiting for better times, and we work elsewhere to make times better. So status quo is not tenable. That's absolutely true. I would very much like to echo this, that it is also, as a government representative, it's incredibly important to strengthen and actually defend the protection of facts and science. And science basically a methodological way to falsify or verify hypotheses in whatever field. And, you know, the Enlightenment, which is sort of foundation of modern civilization, was about rulers accepting that although I feel that the world is flat, the scientists tell me that it's round. And at the end of the day, it's okay. It's not woke. You know, it's acceptable. All right, I have to rearrange. This is, you know, when we went from Middle Ages to Enlightenment. And if we're going backwards, we're in deep trouble. For all of us, very, very serious trouble. Because if you don't believe, and of course, scientists never agree on everything. You know, this is, I have a research background myself. But, you know, you agree on certain methods that make certain things more likely and certain things are simply wrong. So I think for the rest of us who are not in science as such, just to accept that there is such a thing that think there is truth and false is a foundation for our civilization. And we need to stand up for that, and we need to take the omen for what you see in some countries and make sure it doesn't happen here.
So just briefly speaking about myth and reality, facts and fiction, on a political level, is there a tendency to sometimes accept and tolerate faulty statements? And I have in mind the statements that the US president has made recently with regard to Greenland, saying that it faces a serious threat from Russia and China, and there are warships swarming around the area. To what extent do you agree with this? Is it right or false? And should you speak up when you see that there are certain falsehoods being told?
Well, I mean, this is a very central issue to the conversations we are having. You know, there is definitely a need to take the security of the Arctic more seriously. And thankfully, there's also several arrangements to enable that. It's NATO. It's including cooperation with the EU, but Arctic countries, 7 out of 8 Arctic countries are NATO. The Kingdom of Denmark has a defense agreement with the US from 1951, which allows for much, much more access to Greenland within the current framework. So what we have done, and this, I mean, I'm proud to say, practically every single one of the 31 NATO members that are not US has said, on the one hand, we stand by the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland for Greenlanders, and whatever should happen to the Danish realm, if anything should change, it's up to the Greenlanders and the Danes, nobody else. So we stand up for that, not only because of Denmark, Kingdom of Denmark, but because of the principle that you simply don't take other people's land by force. At the same time, we also say collectively that we're more than willing to discuss the real security challenge in the Arctic and work on them together. So that's this double message, has been very explicit from all of us, and I'm talking about the very best friends of the United States of America.
There have been very explicit statements of solidarity, but beyond the statements, what are you willing to do to stand up to an ally like the United States if it goes from attempts to influence and control Greenland to something more concrete?
Well, I was in Davos. I was listening to the president when he said that he would not use force against the Kingdom of Denmark and Greenland, and a few hours later that he withdrew the threats of tariff punishment for those of us who actually said we're ready to enhance our presence in Greenland because we want to take security issues seriously. So that response has already had an effect. I am very much aware with Vivian Motzfeld and Lars Løkke Rasmussen, there's still work to do, but we are in a different space, and kudos to them for taking this very wisely into a different space, and we rest assured that we're all with you here.
But is the US still a reliable ally, yes or no?
So,
time is tight.
What politicians don't like yes or no questions. So, I mean, the US is a very important ally, and we are just looking in a region where we have a significant and increasing American participation as we want to in exercises, in overseeing what's happening on the Russian side in the coal line and our waters. So we work very closely with the US, and there are so many Americans who are very much aware of the importance of these areas and the importance of alliance. So, and we've been allied with the US for 77 years, and there have been different presidents through these 77 years.
All right, so the answer is yes.
Yeah.
They are still a trusted ally despite all of the uncertainties. But we'll get back to it. Foreign Minister Motzfeld, if I can come to you very quickly. I mean, you said that the time now was for negotiations and that you were seeking a diplomatic way out of the impasse with the United States. You also mentioned briefly the red lines. Has the threat of the United States to acquire Greenland one way or the other, even though President Trump has said that there will be no military means used, has it completely disappeared, or do you still have concerns?
Oh, no, I think that the concerns is still very high, but what we stand just for 3 weeks ago and where we are today, I feel more I see more hope in the future, and at the same time that how important it is to take this diplomatic track. And now we are in direct communication, and instead of talking to each other through media, and I think that the decision to make this working group gives us a sense of hope, and of course we'll do our best to find the best solution so we can. Of course, United States has been our ally for many years and a friend, and we have been saying in many circumstances how important it is for our security. We have been friends still today and allies, but the rhetoric you have been used is not something you have been heard from your ally. So the situation has demanded many things from our side to find the right solutions. Of course, with the in cooperation with Denmark. Also, making this defense agreement we did with the defense minister. At the same time that we are taking issues that we have never been taken before, talking about capabilities that we don't even have terminology on that. We don't even have word for that. So at the same time, all these tensions that came so fast, that you also need to have your people with you. And talking about low tension just for 2 years ago, and still have that in your policy as a very high priority, but seeing the reality is changing and finding the right balances, and yes, it's still very difficult.
But what is your absolute red line? Would you ever contemplate selling Greenland to the United States? And do you believe that NATO diplomacy in Davos actually helped secure Greenland's sovereignty? Are you confident that your red lines were passed on to the United States?
I believe that situation demands that we make many dialogues. We talk with each other. But I think the red lines has been very clear from our side. We stand with Kingdom of Denmark and our right to self-determination, territorial integrity, world order and international law, and these are very much our red lines.
So Greenland is not for sale?
Greenland is not
Not
for
today,
sale.
not in the future?
Absolutely not. And we have been there in thousands of years. To be in Greenland, you need to adapt in any changes. And these changes are something that also demands adaptation, and finding the creativity that you are so good at, because to find the solution you only have yourself to solve.
High Representative Kallas, how are you adapting? How is the EU adapting to this new Arctic environment?
Well, we are adapting, but I wanted to address something that the professor said. I absolutely agree that climate change is the biggest risk here and across the world. Actually, if I go around the world and I talk to countries in Indo-Pacific, and they say that there are superpowers who say that we are not coming here to preach you about climate change, then they say you don't actually understand what life we are living, because this is our biggest risk. Now, Europe is dealing with the climate change, and it's increasingly hard because, not the whole powers are there anymore. And I absolutely agree with you that the issue of trusting science is a very important issue, because also democracy is based on trust. If people can't really believe what to, or have to doubt what is right or what is wrong, and there's so much blurring of the picture, then you can't really, you can manipulate very much on the basis of you don't really know what is going on. So this is dangerous for democracy, and actually right now, Europe is still fighting with the climate change. Yesterday I was in the Norwegian Parliament, and then was also one member is like, Europe is weak because you are dealing with all these climate issues, and you're trying to put forward the policies that are making your economy weaker. Yes, but we want our kids to live in this world as well. So that is, yes, maybe a bit a bigger prices at this moment for us, but at the same time, there also is a life after us. So I think this is important. And so to answer your question, we are adapting to this. So before we dealt only with the climate change, environment research when it comes to the Arctic, fisheries, of course, not to forget. But now we are also dealing with the security issues, because this is a new concern that is rising.
High Representative Kallas, good to hear you talk so much about climate change, and I think, Professor, you'll be happy that this is the one issue that every politician can agree on.
Not every politician,
come on.
Well, look at the news.
If we leave the United States aside,
well,
and a couple of other places.
Kind of leave them aside.
Well, let's bring the US back in, as I like to go into the more sort of provocative areas where there might be less agreement. On stage earlier in your speech, you talked about how the Arctic requires more hard power, and that there was recently a radical change in the US thinking. You didn't mince your word. You stand with Greenland and the rest of it. But you did say as well in Brussels that the EU vows to hold its ground. I just wonder how. Is it not often too cautious because of its dependence on the United States for security and defense? Mark Rutte said it very bluntly.
Of course we are cautious, because there's a lot at stake. There's a full-scale war going on European continent, and there are threats coming from economic coercion, big challenges from China that is influencing our economies. If it is influencing our economies, it's influencing jobs and people's salaries, and then it's creating polarization within our societies and more instability. So it's all very much interlinked. So we have to carefully walk this road and try to adopt and work. We don't want the conflict with anybody. We want a peaceful life and prosperity for our peoples. But it is the situation where we are, and if you have such big risks, also the military threats, then you also need to work on building the defense that is acting as a deterrent, so we might not need it if the deterrence is strong enough.
And we want to come back to this, how important it is for Europe to build its own defense capability. But I do want to move, last but not least, to Christian Danielsen and ask you as well about how you assess this growing geopolitical tense landscape, and whether or not Europe can and should build its own defenses. to rely less on the United States?
Well, that's what we are doing.
How fast can it happen?
Well, I think we have said that the ambition should be that we should have a ability to defend ourselves by 2030, if I remember rightly. And if you look on the investments being done in countries like Estonia or Poland, Sweden, and nearly all of the member states, it's moving very fast in that direction. So that's what we are doing. But if your broader question is about, if we go back to the Arctic, I think what is interesting right now is we have this new reality where we have adversaries, and put it bluntly, it's Russia. I mean, if you look around, Russia is the adversary. I mean, you mentioned it very clearly, Foreign Minister, and you mentioned the build-up of the bases and capacities that Russia is building along the North Sea route. On that one, NATO is absolutely essential, and there we're working with the Americans. So what is happening now is that we are building up capacity to plan defense plans.